Hi everyone, so in today's video we'll be looking at multiplication methods. We'll look at 3 different methods, and to start off with we're just going to be looking at the column method, okay? And we'll also be looking at how we can apply these 3 methods to different sizes of numbers, okay? So let's start off with the first one. We've got the column method, and the question that we'll look at is the following. So 7 times by 84. So firstly, we'll just look at 1-digit numbers being multiplied by 2-digit numbers. Okay, so let's look at how we can set out this following question. So column method, with that, what we do is we put the bigger number on top and the smaller number at the bottom, okay? And we also need to make sure that we line up the units with the units, okay, and the tens with the tens if they were in the question. It mainly applies when we've got 1 digit being multiplied by a 2-digit number, that we've got to put the smaller number at the bottom, okay? And you'll see why when we look at examples of bigger numbers being multiplied together, where we've got 2 digits being multiplied by 2 digits, okay? So let's first focus on this question. So this is how we can set it out, and step 1 will be to multiply 7 by our 4. Okay, to multiply the units together. So 7 times 4 is 28. Okay, so we can put our 8 at the bottom, and we've got to remember to carry the 2. So I'm just going to carry it with a different colour and place it on top of the tens column, okay, on top of the 8, so that I remember to add that to my answer when I do 7 times by 8. So next what I need to do is 7 times by 8, which gives us 56, okay? And adding the 2 gives us 58, okay? So therefore my answer is just 588. Okay, so next we'll look at the grid method with the similar example. We've got 1 digit being multiplied by 2 digits. So we've got 76 and we're multiplying it by 8 this time. With the grid method, what that helps us with is that we can make sure that we multiply all the different elements that we need to multiply together, okay? And that we're not missing out, for example, the units being multiplied by the tens or the hundreds, etc. And that will slowly make sense to you when we look at more examples, okay? The way to set this one out will be that we'll need to draw a 2x1 box, okay? Okay, so here's my box, okay? We've got it's split into 2, and we've got 1. So here's my box, and we're going to split it in the middle down like this, okay? And since I've got 76, I'm going to split up the 76 into its tens and units. So I'll have 70 here and 6 there. And then I'm left with my 8 that's being multiplied by 76. So I'll place the 8 down here, okay? And now I can carry out my multiplication. So I'll do the answers again in a different colour to help us see clearly what's going on. So I've got 8 times by 70, that gives us 560. Remember, 8 times 7 is 56, and then you're just adding the extra 0 because you're multiplying by 70. Then we've got 8 times by 6, which gives us 48. So here you can see there's no carrying involved like we did with the column method, so it's a bit beneficial and easy in that sense. And then the last step to do is to add up your answers. Okay, so we've got 560, and we're adding 48 to it. So it's just a case of doing a column addition. 8, and then we've got 6 plus 4, which gives us 10, so we've got the 0. We're going to carry our 1, and then we've got 5 plus 1, which gives us 608 as my final answer. Okay, so method 3 is Napier's bones, okay, and we'll be looking at the following question, 9 times by 58. And again, we're going to be needing to draw a 2x1 box, okay, in order to do our calculation. Okay, so this is how we draw our box, okay, and we're going to be placing our number 58 at the top. This time, with like the grid method, we split up our 58 into its tens and units. We're not going to do that with Napier's bones. We'll just place the 5 here, okay, and the 8 there, and our 9 down by the side. Okay, and you would have noticed that it's different from the grid method in the sense that I've split up my boxes into diagonals as well. Okay, and what I'm also going to do is just continue my diagonals down here with dotted lines. Okay, and you'll see in a bit why I'm doing this as well. So let's go ahead and solve this multiplication question. So I've got 9 times by 8 first of all. So 9 times by 8 we know is 72. So I'm going to place my 7 in here, in my tens here, and the 2, the units, down here. Okay, so that's why we've got our diagonals, in order to split our answers up into their respective place values. Okay, then I've got my 9 times by 5, which gives me 45. So I'm going to place the 4 there and the 5 at the bottom there, again for the same reason. Next, what we need to do is just add, okay, along the diagonal lines. Okay, so I've got my 2, so I've got no other unit, so I'm just going to be, in this diagonal, I'm just going to be placing my 2 here. Then in the second diagonal, okay, I've got my 7 and my 5. If I add them together, I get 12, so I'm going to place my 2 here, and I'm going to carry my 1 over to the next column, and I'll just place it like this. And in my final diagonal, I've just got 4 plus my 1, which gives me 5. Okay, and that's my answer. So my answer is 522. And that's just how it is. Okay, with Napier's bone, it's just remembering how to set up your box and remembering to draw your diagonals and how you add them up as well. Okay, apart from that, it's quite straightforward, and it's also a really good method for when you get harder questions, for example multiplication with decimals. Okay, next we're going to look at 2 digits being multiplied by 2 digits. Okay, and the first method we'll look at is the column method, and that is 33 times by 46. Okay, now in this example of the column method, it doesn't matter whether you place the smaller number at the bottom or the bigger, because they're both the same size, so they've both got tens and units in them. Okay, so just because of the previous example, I'll do the same order. So I'll put the bigger one at the top, 46, because it's numerically bigger, and then the 33 at the bottom, and my multiplication sign goes here. So to start off with, we're going to do it in the same way as we did before. So 3, the units being multiplied by the units. So 3 times 6 gives me 18. Okay, so I'm going to place my 8 at the bottom, but remember to carry my 1 over there. Then I've got 3 this time being multiplied by 4. So that is going to be 12. And then I've got to remember to add the 1, which is 13. Okay. Now, next is where it gets a little bit tricky, okay, because you've got your 30 this time, okay, being multiplied by 6 and then being multiplied by 40. Okay, so it's going to be slightly different. So when I've got 30 being multiplied by 6, I would be getting 180 this time. So that means I've got to place a 0 here where the units are instead of the 8 like we did before, because it's no longer just a 3 being multiplied by 6. And I've also got the, so it's 180, so I've also got the 8 to be putting down here in the tens column. And then I've got to carry my 1, okay, in the hundreds column. So what I'm going to do with my 1 is I'm going to just place it at the top here, so that I remember to add it with my answer here. Okay, so next I've got 30 times by 4, or 30 times by 40. That gives me 1200. Okay, and then I've got to remember to add my 100 on top of that. So that gives me an answer of 1300. So I'm just going to place my 1 here and my 3 there. So it's 1380. Okay, the answer to that. Then I need to finish adding up my numbers, my digits. So let's add the units together. So we've got 8 add 0 is just 8. 3 add 8 gives us 11. Again, I've got to remember to be carrying, okay, carefully. So we had 8, add 3 is 11, so I've got to remember to carry my 1 here. Then I've got 3 plus 1, and then plus another 1 gives me 5. Sorry about that. Gives me 5, and then lastly I've just got my 1 in the thousands column. So that means my answer is 1518. Okay, so next we'll look at the grid method, and for this question we're going to be looking at 17 multiplied by 85. And this time you'll notice that my grid is being split up into 4 boxes. That's because I've got 2 digits being multiplied by 2 digits. Okay, so we're going to split up the 17 first at the top into 10 and 7, and then 85 into 80 and 5. Okay, so again with the grid method as well, it doesn't matter which order you put your numbers in. So I could have put my 85 at the top and my 17 down here. It would still give me the same answer because all I'm doing is multiplying all the different parts of my number together. Okay, so I've got 80 times by 10 first of all, which gives me 800. Then 80 times by 7, which gives me 560. 5 times by 10 is 50, and then lastly 5 times by 7 is 35. And then my final step is to add them all together. Okay, so I've got 800 plus 560 plus 50 and plus my 35. The thing to be careful about here is just remembering to use all of your numbers, okay? And what might help you is if you just cross them out as you put them down here for addition, okay? That can be helpful in remembering that you've included all of your numbers when you're adding them. So my answer should be 5 here, and then I've got in my 10 6 plus 5 plus 3, okay? That gives me 14. I'm going to carry the 1 over, okay? And I've got 8 plus 5, and then add another 1, that gives me 14 again. So my answer is 1445. Okay, so next we'll be looking at Napier's bone, again with 2 digits numbers being multiplied together. So I've got 38 times by 64 here. So as you can see, I've got a similar 2 by 2 grid like I did with the grid method, but I'm going to be splitting up it in diagonals in the following way. Okay, so I've got one diagonal here, one big diagonal going across here, and then one little one going down there. And again, I'm going to continue my lines by using dotted lines. Remember, for the last part where we're doing our multiplication and our addition. Okay, so I'm going to write down my numbers around the box. So I've got 38, so I'll just put 3 there and an 8, and then 64 down by the side here. Again, it doesn't matter whether you put 64 here or 38 and vice versa, okay? It will still give you the same answer. So let's begin. So I've got my 6 first of all, and I'm multiplying it by my 8. So 6 times by 8 we know is 48. So my 4 goes in here and my 8 goes there. So it's like the tens column and the units column, okay? Then I've got my 6 we multiply by 30. Okay, or 6 we multiply by 3, sorry. So 6 times by 3 gives me 18. So I'm going to put a 1 there and an 8 there, okay? Then next I've got 4 multiplied by 8 this time, which gives me 32. So 3 here, 2 down there for the units, and 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, now for the addition part. So in this diagonal, I've just got my 2, so that's what I'm going to put there. And here in this big diagonal, okay, I've got 8 plus 3 plus 2. So therefore that gives me 13. So I'm going to put a 3 down here and carry my 1 over to the next diagonal. Okay, so I've just put the 1 there. So I've got 4 plus 8 plus 1 plus 1. That again gives me 14. Sorry, that gives me 14. So my 4 goes here, and again I'm going to carry my 1 over to the next column. So in that last diagonal, I've just got 1 plus 1, which is 2. Okay, so the answer is 2,432. So now we'll be looking at doing 3-digit numbers multiplied by 2-digit numbers. And again, the first method that we're going to look at is the column method, where we'll be doing 406 times by 32. And this time, the way we set it out, we need to make sure that we've got the smaller number at the bottom and the bigger one at the top in the following way. Okay, otherwise we won't get the right answer. Okay, so we start off by having doing 2 times by 6, just like we did normally before. So 2 times 6 gives us 12. So I'm going to place my 2 here and carry the 1 at the top. Then I've got 2 times by nothing, which is just nothing, and then add the 1, gives me 1 here. Okay, and then lastly I've got 2 times by 4, which gives me 8. Okay, then I'm looking at next 30 times by 6. Okay, so since it's 30 times by 6, I'm going to need to place a 0 down here. And of course 3 times 6 is 18, so 30 times 6 is 180. So I also need to put down my 8. And then remember to carry my 1 over here. So I'm just going to place a little 1 here so I remember to add it to whatever the answer is next. So now I've got 30 times by 0, which is again 0, and adding the carried 1 gives me a 1 over here. Then I've got 30 times by 4, or 30 times by 400, sorry, and that gives me 12,000. So I'm just going to write down my 12. Okay. Okay, and then last step is that we need to be adding our 2 sets of multiplication. So we've got 2 plus 0, it gives me... So lastly, we need to be adding our 2 sets of multiplications. So I've got 2 plus 0, which just gives me 2. 1 plus 8 is 9. 8 plus 1 is 9. And then I've got my 1 and my 2. So the answer is 12,992. So next we'll be looking at the grid method, where we've got 346 times by 94. And this time our grid will be a 3 by 2. Okay. So what I need to do is put the 346 at the top, break it down into its different place values. So I've got 300, 40 and 6, and then 94 down the side, so 90 and 4. Okay, so in this scenario it does matter where you put your numbers, because I've got 3 columns at the top. That's why I'm going to put my 346 at the top instead of down here by the side. Okay, and then next step is where we do our actual multiplication. So 90 times by 300, so we'll just do 9 times 3 is 27 and add the 3 zeros. 90 times 40, again we'll just do 9 times 4 is 36, add the 2 zeros. 9 times 6 is 54, and because it's 90 we need to add the extra 0. Then 4 times 300, well that's just going to be 1200 because it's 4 times 3, which is 12, and add the 2 extra zeros. Then 4 times 40 is 4 times 4, which is 16, add the extra 0. And then 4 times 6 gives us 24. Okay, and then lastly what we need to be doing is just adding up our 6 different numbers together. Okay, so the way I like to do this is just by putting them in descending order. So 27,000, so the biggest one at the top. And also if you cross them out as you're doing them, that can also help you remember to include all of the numbers. Okay, because a common mistake is that we tend to forget to include all of them. So we've got 3600, then we've got 1200 next. Okay, and then I've got my 540. Okay, out, and then I've got my 160, and then lastly got my 24. Okay, so I know that I've included all of them, and now I need to just be adding them together. So here I've just got 4 in my units. Tens I've got 4, 6 add 2, so that is 12. I need to carry the 1. Okay, and then in the next column I've got 6 plus 2 plus 5 plus 1, and you add the extra 1 as well. That gives me 15. Okay, remember to carry the extra 1. So I've got 7 plus 3 is 10, plus the extra 2 gives me 12. So 2, and then also carry the extra 1. And then lastly, I've just got 1 plus 2, which gives me 3. Okay, so that means that the answer is 32,524. Okay. Okay, so lastly, we'll look at Napier's bonds, again with our 3 digits being multiplied by 2-digit numbers. Okay, so in this scenario, I've got 149 times by 72. Okay, and the way we'll sketch our box is quite similar to the grid method, in the sense that we've got a 3 by 2 grid, but we also need to remember to add our diagonal lines. That's what differentiates the Napier's bonds method from the grid method. Okay, and I also need to remember to continue my diagonals, okay, with dotted lines, because that helps us to remember to add our final answers across each diagonal. Okay, and next we need to just remember to place our numbers in the correct way. So I've got 149, so my 3 digits will go at the top, on top of each column, and then the 72 is going to go down the side, because that's where I've got my 2 rows. Okay, so to start off with, we'll be doing 7 times by 9, and that gives me 63. Then 7 times by 4 gives me 28, and 7 times by 1 finally is just a 7. So because it's just a 7, I've got no unit, so the 0 goes there in the tens column. Next, I've got 2 times by 9, well that's just going to be 18. Then 2 times by 4, that's just going to be 8 and no tens. And then 2 times by 1 is just going to be 2 and no tens again. And then what I need to do is remember add across my diagonals. So on the first diagonal, I've just got an 8, so I'm just going to put an 8 down here. Next, I've got 8, 1 and 3, so I need to be adding them together, and that gives me 12, sorry. So I've got 2, and I need to remember to carry the 1 in the next diagonal, like so. And then I've got 6 plus 8 plus 2 plus the extra 1. So that gives me 17. So I need to remember to place my 7 here and carry the extra 1. Okay, and then lastly, I've got 7 plus 2 plus the extra 1. Okay, that gives me 10. So I'm going to place a 0 here, place a 0 there, and remember to carry my extra 1 over. Okay, so that leaves me in my final diagonal with just a 1. Okay, and my answer, if I just read across like this, starting from here, is 10,728. Okay, so the way to read your answer is just starting right from the top of your diagonals and just going downwards. It's almost like an L shape. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our multiplication methods tutorial. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Also share it with your friends and family, and remember to subscribe for more, as I do post weekly. Okay, thank you for watching.